Hello there, Ramblers, and welcome to another instalment of Reese Rambles, my weekly podcast all about the latest comings and goings, movings and shakings, and indeed all the rest of it in the worlds of vintage and retro computing, gaming and technology. Hope you're all doing well out there. It has cooled down a little bit over the past week here in the UK. Of course, I wasn't in the studio last week, and I suppose I should start with a bit of an explanation as to what happened there, because I fully intended to come to the studio last week and sit down and record a ramble for you all. And indeed, I had actually done all of the prep for that as well. Trouble is, the internet was broken at home, and it turned out that it was a fault with the line itself, and that meant that I had to wait in at home all morning for an OpenReach engineer to come out and diagnose that. And for the benefit of my overseas listeners and viewers, OpenReach are the people who look after the phone infrastructure here in the UK. It was spun off from BT or British Telecom many years ago. Well, that's really relevant, but interesting, I guess. And the person that they sent out was very young and very new. And she was brilliant, I will say. You know, she ran through all of the diagnostics, plugged in all the test equipment and stuff, and actually diagnosed the fault to the pole outside the front of the house. And then informed me that she wasn't actually qualified to climb up the pole to fix the fault. So she had to put a call out to find another engineer who was qualified and had the requisite pole ascension equipment. And I ended up waiting until kind of mid-afternoon for him to arrive, and then for them to basically run through the whole thing between them and eventually fix it. And of course, it was late afternoon by the time it was all fixed, and I just wouldn't have had time to come and record all of this, edit it, and get it uploaded by that point. So unfortunately, last minute cancellation. I know. Cool story, bro. And last week I missed some really big news. So I'm just going to have to dive straight in with this and talk about this, because it's bad. It's really bad out there for game developers again. And, you know, I am in the heart of the game development industry here in Leamington. So, I do feel for people. Of course, I'm a developer myself, not in the world of gaming, but I am a developer myself in my day job and have seen the effects of this as well. But this is the Microsoft news, or more specifically, the Xbox division of Microsoft. They have laid off an awful lot of people all over the world, over 3,000 people, and they're also spinning off some studios that they acquired over the past few years, and kind of spinning them off and making them independent as well, which means that they will lose the financial backing of the giant that is Microsoft. So, yeah, not looking good for the future of those studios, unfortunately. I do really feel for you if you have been personally affected by this. I do know people locally in the games industry. Thankfully, touch wood, they haven't personally been affected by this. But it is very bleak out there. So there has been, in the meantime, however, published just a couple of days ago, as at the time of recording, a bit of a post-mortem of this, I guess, a bit of a write-up from GameDeveloper.com, rather excellent website, and they have certainly done their homework and spoken to quite a few people in the industry who have been hit by this. So, worth covering this again, even though I am over a week late with this news, because we do have this wonderful kind of retrospective of it. I say wonderful. I guess it's, given the circumstances. But the headline here, the entire thing is going to fall apart. Inside the latest round of mass layoffs at Xbox. Multiple workers impacted by the latest job cuts at Xbox believe the decision will hamstring some studios. This is a story by Chris Kerr, who is the senior editor at GameDeveloper.com. And it is a rather lengthy article, so I'm not going to sit here and recite it all to you. Unfortunately, you are going to have to go and read that for yourself. But it starts off, centuries of collective game development experience discarded in minutes. That's how the fifth round of mass layoffs at Xbox since 2023 unfolded, according to those impacted by the cuts. Multiple sources who chose to remain anonymous for fear of reprisal have explained how Microsoft's latest purge, which will result in 3,200 people losing their jobs across Xbox by the end of the current fiscal year, felt bizarrely self-defeating and needlessly cruel. Let's turn the clock back to Monday, July the 6th, when the layoffs were confirmed internally and subsequently announced publicly by Xbox CEO Asha Sharma, who, if you've been following along with my rambles, you will know has only very recently been appointed to that position. She came from internal AI stuff at Microsoft, I believe, from the Copilot team, I think. Anyway, multiple sources spread across Bethesda, ZeniMax Online Studios, and id Software were informed their jobs were being eliminated during a fleeting video call with management at their respective studios. There was no opportunity for those impacted to question the decision or seek an explanation. Chat was disabled. Microphones were permanently muted. In one instance, cameras were automatically turned off, meaning those delivering the news couldn't even see their colleagues' faces. That's nice of them, isn't it? Yeah, calling around all these studios and not even letting people have a say in their own mass layoffs. That's great, Microsoft. Well done. Good work. Good compassion shown there. Those meetings were all swiftly ended. One source claimed the call announcing the widespread layoffs at Doom developer id Software, where 136 people assigned to the studio's office in Texas were let go. And that call lasted under 30 seconds. In the instance of id Software specifically, we're told those being laid off were asked not to come into the office on Monday so late in the day that many had already begun their commute. An Outlook invite was purportedly sent to impacted staff at id Software around 10 minutes before the meeting, hosted by studio boss Marty Stratton, was due to commence. Some people didn't make the call. Slack and internal email access pulled within 48 hours, and the staff were left scrambling to make sense of the situation. And this story does kind of start off by talking about id Software specifically, which of course is of great interest to me. Huge fan of Doom, and indeed all of id Software's games over the years, even the newer ones that did absolutely fantastic work with Doom 2016 and Eternal, of course. I haven't played the Dark Ages yet. Didn't quite appeal to me when it was first released, but I am meaning to get around to actually checking that out. And I believe they had just released an expansion pack for that, some DLC for that as well. There's a lot more about this. Microsoft shoving off responsibility to the unions, stuff like that. And apparently Bloomberg actually caught wind of this back in June and speculated that these mass layoffs were coming. But it just sounds absolutely horrific. So, we've got a source here from someone who was working on the Elder Scrolls Online for ZeniMax, basically describing Microsoft's overall handling of the layoffs as insane. Does Microsoft care? Absolutely not. And they seem to actually put some level of effort and care into making it as painful as possible. Added one source impacted by the cuts at id Software. Microsoft obviously abandoned everyone from the union they laid off, but they've even abandoned the people that weren't in the union. Sharma actively tried to rationalise the cuts, but said she largely failed in that regard because of how Microsoft is implementing the layoffs, eliminating 1,600 roles immediately while pledging to call another 1,600 before the end of the fiscal year. They also questioned how anybody at the company can possibly move forwards. Anyway, there is some news in here about id Software, and they initially put out an announcement saying that development on the id Tech engine would continue. They had the technical expertise in-house to be able to continue with development of that. And apparently that turns out not to be true, according to some internal sources as well. So, in a public statement issued last week, the studio claimed that it still has the staff needed to build the games and tech we're known for. But one studio worker who was laid off last week claimed that statement is stretching reality to breaking point. They explained the majority of staff who worked on the recently launched Revelations expansion for Doom the Dark Ages have been let go. They also suggested the majority of people charged with supporting id Tech, which is the studio's proprietary engine, of course, a branch version of which has also been used by Wolfenstein developer Machine Games, were kicked to the curb. So the majority of people who are responsible for supporting the id Tech engine, which is, absolutely huge name in the gaming world and a proper AAA, a very highly respected and very highly regarded game engine. All of those people are gone. All the people that understand how it works and are qualified to work on that. So they've just gotten rid of all the people who could ever fix, maintain, or change id Tech. So it's most likely going to end up in the trash can. That's where I just come back to. It completely feels like success is detached from your ability to keep a job, and I think that's basically provable, they added. So more details in here. Like I say, it is predominantly covering ZeniMax and id Software, but absolutely horrific handling of this situation by Microsoft, and some really, really nonsensical decision-making as well. I mean, id Software, of all people. I did see some social media posts by John Romero, of course, one of the people who initially founded id Software way back in the day. Worked on the Commander Keen games and Wolfenstein 3D and Doom and all of those. Of course, he is no longer associated with that studio. But he even put a post out, with his condolences for all of the people who'd lost their jobs as well. So that is that. Sad news. Very, very bleak news for Xbox. And it does make me wonder about the future of the platform. So, with that previous story in mind, I suppose it would be a little bit insensitive of me to give a shout out to the Doom shrine behind me, as of course I always do when I have a Doom-related story on Reese Rambles, which indeed this next one is. But I suppose, at the very least, it does serve as a bit of a reminder of happier times at id Software when the Doom series was very much at its peak. So we've got stuff going back to the original shareware release of Doom. We've got the mail order release there. We've got Doom 2, Ultimate Doom, Final Doom. We've got 2016. We've got Eternal, all represented. Doom 3, of course. How can I forget Doom 3 in their various guises? But this next story doesn't involve id Software directly as such, but it does involve the original Doom being ported to a new and interesting platform. And we always like to cover those, don't we? And this one is particularly noteworthy because this one is by Eben Upton, who, if you're not familiar with that name, was the founder of the Raspberry Pi Foundation, of course. The guy behind the Raspberry Pi was working at Broadcom, big chip manufacturer, and had the idea for the Raspberry Pi and made it a reality. Now the best-selling computer of all time, I believe, and a really revolutionary thing as well. Heavily inspired by the BBC Micro, which is very relevant to this story. The BBC Micro being a staple of British classrooms back in the 80s, the result of the BBC's initiative to get everybody learning how to use computers at school. Of course, very, very good initiative. And it's a Doom-related project on the BBC Micro, to cut all of the waffling short. So, here we go. If we check out Eben Upton's GitHub over here, we have Doom on the BBC Micro, a wireframe port of Doom's E1 M1, running on a stock 1981 BBC Micro Model B, which has a 2 MHz 6502 CPU, 32K of RAM plus sideways RAM, and it has full BSP traversal, analytical hidden surface removal, perspective projection, walkable with working doors and lifts at roughly 7 frames per second. And you can actually run this on your own BBC. It is all open source. You can go and download it, and you can load it up if you have for example, an SD card interface, something like that, which I do indeed on my own BBC Micro. And it says here why this is hard. Doom's renderer leans on a 32-bit CPU, 16.16 fixed point, 64K of lookup tables, hardware-friendly column drawing. The BBC Micro has a 2 MHz 8-bit 6502 with no multiply instruction, 32K of main RAM, 5K of which is the frame buffer, and a 16K banked window for everything else. Every design decision below falls out of those constraints. Now, I was a little bit confused by this, and I do want to be very upfront about this as well, because I do think that this is important. So, this write-up does talk about some of the technical challenges behind getting Doom, or at least this wireframe rendering of Doom's iconic first level, running on the 8-bit 6502 CPU, which of course is quite the technical achievement. And you would have thought Eben Upton, someone with his credentials, would be the man for the job. But I noticed when I was checking out this GitHub repo that the one and only contributor to this project is Claude. Anthropic's Claude, the agentic LLM coding tool that is taking the software world by storm and perhaps arguably, or perhaps provably, responsible for a lot of the layoffs that we are seeing in the software development industry. But it seems that Eben, rather than writing this code himself, has been co-authoring all of these commits with Claude, this AI LLM coding tool. Now, I don't necessarily have any particular beef with Claude. I did think it was very odd that there was no reference to this in the write-up. No kind of breakdown of how that was actually used to write the code. Unless I'm missing something here, I'm not quite sure. But it does go into quite a lot of detail. I mean, this write-up was probably quite possibly written by Claude as well. I'm not quite sure. It'd be nice to have some clarity on this anyway. But this, of course, this is quite an important and big happening in the world of Doom and in the world of software development. And of course, because of Eben's name being associated with it, I couldn't not cover this, but I did want to be very, very clear about that. And if we check out the video here over on Eben's official YouTube channel with his 7 subscribers. Okay. Fun with Fable, it says here. So Fable is one of Anthropic's, it is Anthropic's most sophisticated Claude model. So I guess that's some kind of disclosure there, I guess, in a one-line YouTube description. But nothing really pointed out in the comments or anything there either. But as we can see, it is quite impressive, as you might expect. We've got the second room here with that zigzag floor, where you have the imps kind of up on the lift as you kind of walk into the room. And it is very recognisably E1M1 from Doom. We can see we have we've got the door to the secret here, the secret wall that opens up, go down the steps. And of course, this takes you to the outside area. Even in this very kind of basic wireframe form, it is still very, very recognisable, isn't it? For those of you watching on YouTube, I guess those listening in the car or on your commute or whatever, just have to take my word for it. But of course, this will be linked down below if you do want to go and check out the video. And indeed, the GitHub repo for this. So quite interesting to see this bizarre collection of things coming together in one story. We've got Eben Upton, the guy behind the Raspberry Pi. We've got Doom, of course. I always have to cover Doom. And we've got Claude, Fable, the latest model, agentic coding. How much has Eben actually steered the development process of this? I mean, we've got 579 commits, so I'm guessing it wasn't just a case of, typing a prompt into Claude and saying, please port Doom to the BBC Micro and letting it get on with it. I'm guessing there was a lot of back and forth and checking of the actual code and stuff, but an interesting thing to debate. I mean, these tools are here. They are very much the reality of the modern development ecosystem. And it is what it is. Bit of a double-edged sword, that story. How appropriate that story number 3 this week refers to a company that quite infamously can't count to 3. I am, of course, talking about Valve. We had Portal 1 and 2. No Portal 3. We had Left 4 Dead 1 and 2. And no Left 4 Dead 3. We had Team Fortress 1 and 2. No Team Fortress 3. And then, of course, we had Half-Life, which is the topic of this story. The original Half-Life, of course, an absolute masterpiece of a game, which I actually played when it was brand new, when it was first released back in the day, along with all of its various expansions and then the sequels, of course, Half-Life 2. We had episodes 1 and 2. And then more recently, we had Alex as well, the VR spin-off of Half-Life, which I haven't actually played because I don't have a VR setup. But Half-Life 3 has been something that people have been anticipating for the longest time now, myself included, and any bit of Half-Life 3 news that pops up across the internet immediately comes up on my radar, gets my hopes up again, and then I have to go and cry in a corner for a bit when I realise it's not quite what it seemed. And that has happened again in the past week. So, of course, I had to cover this. This story here over on egw.news. This was posted on my Discord server. Half-Life 3's first screenshot reportedly leaked, but fans are doubtful about its accuracy. There's a bit of an understatement. So, this was posted over on Reddit, and it comes from Discord. It comes from a Discord which is supposedly quite closely associated with Valve and Gabe, of course, the owner of Valve, Gabe Newell. And I suppose we'll go straight over to Reddit because there isn't really any new information here on this EGW article. It was posted in r/Half-Life 3. Potential Half-Life 3 leak. Weird screenshots posted and instantly nuked on Gabe followers' Discord. Guys, I was lurking in Gabe Followers' Discord server on this Friday, I guess. Well, either you were or you weren't. Some random user posted weird screenshot. Unfortunately, I didn't grab it in time because it got deleted almost instantly. I don't know if by mods or the OP themselves. But then the same account posted 2 more screenshots, and I was quick enough to save them this time. They got nuked right after 2. The first one that I missed was basically the same scene, but a slightly different angle. Gordon was standing a bit further back than in the second one. I'm pretty sure those were the only differences. Is this AI, or has anyone seen this scene anywhere on YouTube or mod? And we'll check out the screenshot, I guess. So we've got Eli Vance here, I guess we can see from the back. Of course, he, spoiler alert, of course, he quite famously died at the end of episode 2, or at least it appeared. Got a bit of a caption here. Oh my God, Gordon, look over there. And there's a big glowing blue orb sphere thing. And then we have a slightly different screenshot. Looks like this is from a few seconds later with that caption kind of fading out and Eli having moved. We've got the familiar HUD on the screen from Half-Life 2. Not quite sure why they wouldn't have changed that for 3. I suppose if it is an early version of the game, then they perhaps haven't started work on that yet. And we've got this forest scene in the background. Rather a lot of trees and foliage, some nice lighting effects and stuff, but not what you'd really expect from Half-Life 3. I mean, all of the games in this series have really, really pushed the boundaries of what's possible graphically, and this just looks a bit underwhelming. And that is kind of what's clued a lot of people in as to the authenticity of this. So I did see a rather good comment on this. Where is this? On Reddit. This is someone who works with Unreal Engine 5, and it looks just like Unreal Engine 5. And I have to say, having played through Stalker 2 quite recently, which is another UE5 game, it does certainly have that look about it. So it uses the default volumetric clouds for Unreal Engine 5, which of course Valve wouldn't be using in a AAA Half-Life 3 game. The landscape doesn't exist beyond what the player can actually see. So it's a bowl map, which means that you can see that there's actually nothing beyond the hills in the distance, which means that this scene was put together very quickly, apparently. And I must say that does make sense. The foliage, the trees make no sense. They're too dense for gameplay purposes, especially for Half-Life, and the variety is way too big. It's the same 4 models scattered around using the foliage tools. And you can see that some are at a weird angle, which is how the foliage brush works, apparently, in an Unreal Engine 5. And the grass is also pretty weird, apparently, very inconsistent. So also, the pistol has volumetric light on it, which the author of this comment doesn't think was done in Unreal Engine 5, but may have been added later by either Blender or by AI. So this is Mogos the First, full credit due here, because, I fully agree with this comment. So there we go. Someone has mocked up a fake screenshot very, very quickly, apparently, in Unreal Engine 5, perhaps giving it a little bit of extra polish to try to add to the supposed authenticity of it. But this is very much not Half-Life 3. Unless it is, in which case I'm very disappointed with Valve. Of course, many of us were expecting Half-Life 3 to come out a couple of weeks ago when the Steam machine started shipping, but it didn't. So I guess we'll just have to keep waiting. As you're probably aware, I am a huge fan of the Sega Dreamcast, Sega's last foray into the home console gaming market, released all the way back in 1999, a console that was quite sadly taken from us before its time. Have many happy memories playing on my Dreamcast back in the day, and may it rest in peace. But thankfully still kept alive by a very vibrant and quite talented, I will say, homebrew community. You may also be aware of the fact that I have been getting into the PlayStation, the original first generation of PlayStation specifically, but also dipping my toe into the waters of the PlayStation 2 and the PlayStation 3 more recently. I have a PS3 sat here on the desk next to me, which is a bit of a relic of a failed main channel video project. I guess I'm going to have to talk about that publicly at some point. But yeah, the PlayStation and the Dreamcast and the homebrew communities around those. And this next story quite neatly ties those two together. And it's also something that a couple of members on my Discord server have been getting quite excited about over the past week or so. So big shout out to Naoki and to Analog Sheep for repeatedly bringing this project to my attention, because it does look very, very cool. And I do like to give these homebrew devs a bit of support, even if I'm not familiar with the source material at all in this case. But it looks like something I should probably check out. Anyway, if we head over to Blue Sky here, we have Elias Daler, I believe is the name of the account. And it seems that Elias is a developer for both the PlayStation and the Dreamcast platforms and is working on porting a game called Yume Nikki. And if you're not familiar with this game, which I wasn't, I'd seen the screenshots and stuff, and it does look very cute. It's got like a bit of a Tomodachi Life, I don't know, Animal Crossing type feel to it, I guess, although it does have its own very distinctive look and feel as well. Do go and check out the screenshots and the videos of this, because it is quite an interesting looking game. But yeah, apparently this was actually released on the PC, on Windows, using RPG Maker 2003, way back in 2004. Yume Nikki, it's a 2004 surrealist adventure game created by the pseudonymous Japanese developer Kikiyama. The player controls a girl named Madotsuki and explores her dreams, collecting 24 effects that change her appearance and equipment. Random events also occur throughout the game in the form of cutscenes and unique gameplay sequences. The game was developed using RPG Maker 2003 without a traditional plot or battle system. Gameplay instead focuses on the exploration of the dream world. So it was released as freeware back on Kikiyama's website in 2004. It was updated until 2007. The game received a cult following globally, following an English fan translation, and it has an emphasis on open-ended exploration and a lack of combat. So it was described as a precursor to walking simulators, apparently, back in its day. Visual style and horror elements also inspired numerous indie games. It was published on Steam by Playism in 2018. And it was that was part of a promotion of a reboot called Yume Nikki Dream Diary, which was released the same year. An exploration-based adventure game with no dialogue, combat, or plot, and there is no way to reach a game over. So, I really like the sound of this. This sounds quite interesting and very imaginative as well. And it seems that our friend Elias here has taken it upon himself, I need to follow him, there we go, has taken it upon himself to port this to the PlayStation 1. Got as far as releasing a demo of it, which you can actually go and download from itch.io. Demo out now, contains 2 dream worlds to explore. You can run it on a real PlayStation 1. It's a fan game, and I put a lot of love and care into it. I hope you enjoy it. And we've got some screenshots here. Look at that. That's very PlayStation, isn't it? I love that kind of shading effect. And also a rather nice box, a mock-up of a PlayStation 1 game case for that. But more recently, Elias has turned his attention to porting this to the Dreamcast, as mentioned. So we've got the VMU working here. We've got some rather nice, shifty-looking animated eyes here. Of course, the graphical, the visual memory unit that plugs into the Dreamcast controller with that lovely LCD display. And we've got some, of course, we've got some Dreamcast development progress here. So over and above the PlayStation version, it has better models, better lighting, and smoother animation, apparently. And we'll just give this video a play. Just watch the character walking around in the game world here. So looks like it is coming along very nicely on the Dreamcast. And indeed, if you check out Elias's profile over on Blue Sky, which I will link down below, you can see all the development updates from this, and indeed the PlayStation 1 release that predated it, and keep up to date with progress. But it's always nice to see an ambitious Dreamcast porting project, particularly when it is headed up by an individual like this. Just wanted to throw my hat into the ring, give a bit of support, and hopefully send some traffic in the direction of Yume Nikki for the PlayStation 1 and the Sega Dreamcast. Now, I think it's fair to say that those consoles introduced a whole generation of gamers to the concept of games on optical media. I'm not claiming that the PlayStation invented that. Before that, we had the Sega Saturn and various CD-based solutions for some of the previous generations of consoles, like the Mega CD and so on. And on the PC side of things, we had CD-ROMs, which had been around for a fair few years by that point. But I think it is fair to say that the PlayStation did introduce the gaming population at large to the concept, bringing the CD into the hearts and minds and indeed living rooms of gamers all over the world. The CD had various advantages over cartridges, as we know, much bigger storage capacity. We've got support for CD soundtracks on there, full motion video, and a much lower manufacturing cost as well for the console manufacturers. But indeed, there are those of us out there who still pine for the days of the cartridge. Dating all the way back to 1976, we had the Fairchild Channel F, the first cartridge-based console. We had the Atari VCS after that, the 2600, of course, and Nintendo's various offerings over the years. The NES, the SNES, the N64. They did take a bit of a detour, didn't they, with the GameCube and then the Wii, but they have since returned to their roots with the Switch and the Switch 2, going back to cartridges for game releases. At least the ones that aren't cloud-based, online downloadable type offerings. We have seen some rather unfortunate news in recent weeks from Sony and indeed Microsoft, their PlayStation and Xbox divisions, where they have announced that the next generation of consoles will be online only, no physical releases of games. GTA 6, it was also announced that there wouldn't be a proper physical release of that, and those of us on the PC have been getting our games from services like Steam and GOG for quite a few years now. But, as mentioned, there is a lot of nostalgic love out there for cartridges, and believe it or not, if you're a fellow PC gamer, there is now an option, albeit a homemade option, but I'm going to take it, because this is a really cool project. So, story over on tomshardware.com, PC gamer turns Steam games into cartridges with ingenious 2.5-inch SSD system. Games are stored on 128GB drives alongside a script to auto-start the title once plugged in. Story here by Mark Tyson, a name with which we should all be very familiar. Video shows Steam game cartridge system in action, and there is indeed a video of this, so please do check out the link. But I will continue to read the story as written by the fine Mr. Tyson. A PC gamer has created and demonstrated a handy Steam game cartridge system. Over on PCMR, which is a Reddit community, PC Master Race of course, Jibril Sama introduced the system, which blends the old-school console convenience of cartridges with Steam's awesome and agreeably flexible games library. Ingeniously, it upcycles a bundle of old SATA SSDs into Steam-ready game cartridges using a disk mount detect and execute script on the software side and a SATA dock on the hardware side. Icing on this already tasty cake is provided by Jibril Sama's colourfully encased and custom labelled Steam game cartridges. Nice! And we can see a picture of these here. We've got Cyberpunk. We have a cartridge, and this is a sight to behold. It's like a big chunky thing with a nice handle on it, a big red cartridge. I love the look of this and the dock and everything. It is fantastic. It'd be nice to actually have a play with this this system and see it in action. But anyway, to quote the creator of the system, got a couple of used 2.5-inch SSDs for cheap, so I decided to make a game cartridge system. The Redditor casually informs the PCMR masses in the post embedded above. Games are actually on those SSDs with a script to auto-navigate Steam to the games page. Auto-starting the game right away is also possible. So further comments by the OP explain that all the drives bought for this project were 128GB in capacity and €7 a piece, which it says here is $8. I bought some of these old drives myself on eBay. They are indeed a bargain. That's not bad in the current RAM and NAND crunch, and keeps these files off your built-in primary storage. As many readers will know, PC game libraries can easily grow to hog a lot of storage. They reached out to Jibril Sama for some more background information about how the Steam game cartridge system is designed to work with as little user friction as possible. And of course, the system in the video is running Linux, as you might expect, and this uses Valve's Steam URL protocol to navigate to the games page or launch the game when the cartridge is inserted. All it needs is a systemd template to check for a script on the SSD and launch it, and a udev rule to trigger the system, Jabril Sama told Tom's Hardware. So basically, plug in the SSD, udev rule sees the event, triggers the systemd daemon, systemd daemon looks into the SSD and finds the script, and then it executes the script. So, the story goes on to talk about the reception to this by the community over on PCMR, which of course has been overwhelmingly positive, as you might expect. And if you do follow the link in the show notes or down in the description below, you can read about that and also see a video of the system in action. My hat is off to you, creator of this whole setup, Jabril Sama. I think this is absolutely wonderful. I would love to have a go with this myself, as mentioned, and great to see the triumphant return of cartridges on the most unexpected of platforms too, the PC. And so, with the big meaty news stories of the past couple of weeks now well and truly covered, I have some other bits and bobs that may be of interest. I do, of course, do this big wrap-up every so often of the other stories that I get submitted that I don't really have a great deal to say about, but I do find them very interesting, and I think that you'll find them interesting too. And as I say every single time, I don't really have a name for this segment. The most popular suggestion from the community is always Reese's Pieces, which I like. I think it's quite funny, but at the same time, it is trademarked to somebody else, and also, I really don't like Reese's chocolate. I'd rather not be reminded of it every single week. So, yeah, the jury is still out on that one, but what is important is that I do bring these stories to you, and of course, the links are down in the description if you are watching this on YouTube, or in the show notes in your podcast app of choice if you want to dig a bit deeper into some of these. So without further ado, let's start with this. This is the GF1 Neptune, which I have talked about in the past. It is a recreation of a cancelled Sega console. So Sega once had this idea of combining the Mega Drive, or the Genesis, if you like, and the 32X add-on. The 32X was an expansion for the Mega Drive that plugged into the top of it and gave it some extra oomph, some extra processing power, basically turned it into a 32-bit system, or at least that's what they were claiming. And Sega thought that it would make sense to release that as an all-in-one thing called the Neptune. They developed it, they actually got it to the final kind of hardware stages, they announced it to all the gaming press, and then they cancelled it, as you do. But there has been a community effort to recreate this, which you can go out and build for yourself. And there is now also the GF1 Neptune, which I believe is a more commercial offering that I have covered in the past. And this is just a very quick video demo of the GF1 showing its output, its video output capabilities. So you can actually output to an analog display, in this case using composite video, and also to HDMI simultaneously. So you could be playing this on a CRT and capturing the footage over HDMI or streaming it or what have you, which of course is going to be quite a useful thing for the retro gaming community. So nice to see this project still ongoing, and I have talked about this in the past if you want to go and seek it out and pre-order one for yourself. Now, next up, we have the triumphant return of Chuckie Egg, this story over on BBC News. If you are a gamer of a certain vintage like myself and remember playing this game on the BBC Micro or the Acorn Electron or the Spectrum or, any of those kind of 8-bit platforms back in the day, I think it was quite widely ported, you can now enjoy it again. And it's an official offering, this. So, yeah, as the story covers, 4 decades after I last played it, writes David Gregory Kumar on BBC News, Chuckie Egg is back, and I'm controlling bright yellow big-hatted protagonist Henhouse Harry as he collects eggs, seed, and avoids angry birds. Better still, I do not have to wait for what always felt like an age for the game to load into my BBC Model B from cassette tape. Today, I can just fire up a smartphone or tablet, and there Harry is, thanks to Staffordshire software publisher Elite. And this is an interview with Elite's co-founder Steve Wilcox about the game, about why they've decided to bring it back now after 40 years, and some of the kind of information about that, and some historical information about Chuckie Egg, which was all very interesting. Do check out the link. Next up, and very much in the same vein, is End Basic, which is trying to recreate these old basic, systems that these old 8-bit computers had built in. Before we had stuff like Windows and Mac OS and these full-blown kind of desktop operating systems, when you powered on your old computer, it would boot to a BASIC prompt, and you could actually type in BASIC code, the basic programming language, or indeed load that in from a cassette or from a disc or whatever. And the computer was kind of ready to go, fully open, and you could do whatever you liked with it straight off the bat, unlike these kind of more locked down modern approaches to computing, which is the way that things seem to be going. Now, NBasic, as mentioned, is an attempt at creating a modern version of this that runs on modern hardware. And this latest update, which was posted to my Discord last week, covers graphics modes. So we've got some very impressive graphics capabilities here in NBasic. This is running at 1226 by 530 pixels, which, of course, would have been completely unthinkable on the 8-bit systems back in the day. But some really, really nice detailed technical information about this from NBasic's creator. And it was the first I'd heard of this project, but it looks really, really interesting. Who's this? Julio Marino, I believe, is the name of the creator. And you can find that linked down below if you want to go and check out that project. But I thought it was worth shining a little spotlight on that. And nice to see some excellent progress being made on the graphics side of things. Next up, we have an Atari Jaguar related story. And there is another one after this as well. I've got 2 Jag stories this week, which is always good. It's a from-scratch port of Tempest 2000. So, of course, the Llamasoft classic from 1994. A big system seller for the Jaguar, if you could call it that. It's not like the Jaguars were ever a big seller, but, one of the widely considered to be kind of one of the killer apps on that console. And a very, very competent port of the game, as you might expect from Jeff Minter. And this is a port to the Sega Mega CD, which of course I talked about earlier. This uses Mode 1 and apparently it runs from a cartridge, so you actually don't require a CD, but you do require the Sega Mega CD. And I don't know enough about how the hardware works to explain why that is the case, but it is a cool project. There are also 2 links on here to videos of this in action on YouTube. But I tried them and neither of them actually work, so I can't show you what this looks like, which is a shame, but it does look like a very cool project and there is loads of awesome in-depth technical information about this, and of course how the game was squished down from its original 64-ish bit Atari Jaguar roots to, of course, the Sega Mega CD. Very interesting looking project. And I promised some more Jag news. And this one might be even more surprising to you. We're going to hop over to Tom's Hardware next. Dev ports Linux to Atari's notorious Jaguar console from 1993. The first 64-bit console features 2 meg of RAM, 13.3 MHz CPU, and the Tom and Jerry co-processors. The Jaguar was notoriously difficult to program and flopped. I do love some of these headlines that basically cover the entire story in one headline. But anyway, this is Mark Tyson. Again, we talked about one of his stories previously. And it talks about a Spanish system software developer who has ported Linux to the Atari Jaguar. Cake Honolulu is the name of the developer. And of course, the lack of a memory management unit and the severe RAM limitations were perhaps the 2 biggest hurdles to getting this up and running. Very similar in concept to the port to the Mega Drive that I talked about a couple of weeks ago. And, of course, similar to that, it doesn't really do much very useful. But, hey, another 68,000 base system running Linux, much like that project. And that is always interesting to see. Speaking of Linux, another rather bizarre story that has come across my desk this week is the return of Hannah Montana Linux, perhaps one of the most notorious Linux distributions of the 90s. Or was it the early 2000s? It was the early 2000s. Okay, Hannah Montana Linux gets modern remaster after nearly 2 decades. Sweet niblets. New version 26 is built on Debian with a reskin of KDE Plasma. And another story here by Mark Tyson on Tom's Hardware. This has always been quite notorious in the Linux world. It was, I believe, someone's independent kind of homebrew effort to honour their hero, Hannah Montana. Of course, she went on to become Miley Cyrus, didn't she? She was quite a successful pop starlet in her own right, as the old people say. And this offers 18 years worth of security patches. Hannah Montana Linux is back. The distro made as a tribute to the noughties Disney Channel sitcom for tweens and teens featuring the eponymous secret pop star was abandoned in 2009, but now it's back with a modern kernel and about 18 years of patches. With the release of Hannah Montana Linux 26, remaster by developer Noah Cagle. So there you go. If you were a fan of Hannah Montana Linux back in the day and want to check out its latest incarnation, you can now do that. You can run it with all the latest security patches, or if it passed you by at the time, but you very much want to get into it now, you can also do that. Very limited audience for this, I think. But there you go. Another story from Tom's Hardware. They're doing very well this week, aren't they? Mind you, to be fair, they are one of the very few gaming and technology outlets left that actually have decent coverage. But anyway, PS5 emulation ramps up in response to Sony killing physical games. PS5 titles now booting across different emulators with rapid community development for both 2D and 3D games by Hassam Nasir. And this is just a bit of a roundup of some of the PlayStation 5 emulators that are out there. Of course, the PlayStation 5 is still very much a current generation console, so this is quite the technical feat, and it seems the developers behind these emulators have been spurred on by Sony's recent announcement that they are going to be dropping support for physical media, and indeed, of course, emulation, very, very important for the world of game preservation, and always a very heartening thing to see, the efforts on that front. So, if you want to know what the latest is in the PlayStation 5 emulation scene, this article is an excellent starting point. Of course, will be linked down below as mentioned. And there is an awful lot of information here that's very, very interesting. So, do go check that out. And finally, the final of Reese's Pieces that I have for you this week. Again, another update on this component shortage thing that's ongoing due to all these AI tech bros buying it all up. And this is RAM. Again, PCGamer.com. DRAM demand predicted to outstrip supply by 28.7 exabytes in 2030, which is almost as much as the actual DRAM in the world right now. Story here by Jacob Fox. More to come. And yeah, I talked a little bit a couple of weeks ago about DDR3 and DDR2 and how they are actually back in demand because they are of no interest to said AI tech bros and their data centers, and how some products are actually being re-engineered to use DDR2 and DDR3 RAM, which many of us, of course, remember from the old PlayStation, Pentium 4 era. PlayStation, I've got PlayStation on the brain. So yeah, more unfortunate and rather sad news to do with RAM availability, thanks to all that, and a bit of speculation that this is going to continue and indeed get even worse into 2030, most recently affecting the availability of the Steam machine, which I also mentioned earlier on. So a nice little roundup, a little wrap-up of stories there for you, and again, if any of those have taken your interest, do check out the links down below. And that, my dearest ramblers, brings me around rather neatly to my regular Videos of the Week feature, wherein I feature a video or videos that I have seen, or indeed that have been submitted to me, but I haven't actually quite gotten around to watching yet, here on the old YouTubes that have enlightened or entertained or educated or otherwise improved my life in some small way. Often there's one video, often there's more than one, often they are vintage and retro computing technology and gaming related, and quite often they aren't. But I like to think that there's always a bit of a mixed bag and that there's always something of interest in there. So I have 7 for you this week, and I guess that means I should probably just get on with this. Now, the first video that I have for you is the bands of the HM Royal Marines, and this is a performance at the Royal Albert Hall of the Halo theme. Of course, the Xbox classic that is Halo, the original released all the way back in 2001, 25 years ago, believe it or not, alongside the original Xbox. And it is quite the composition. We've got, of course, a big choir. We've got strings and horns and all sorts of stuff. It is a really fantastic piece of music in its own right, I will say. And of course, also has that gaming connection to it. Now, the reason this video initially caught my attention when it popped up on my YouTube homepage was because the conductor he looks very familiar to me. In fact, I think he very much looks like Neil from the Retro Collective, of course, formerly known as RMC. There we go. Let's get a good shot of the conductor here. There he is. And I shared this on Blue Sky this week, and it did amuse quite a few people. I also shared it with Neil, and he wasn't amused. But there you go. Nonetheless, it is a great performance of an iconic piece of game music. It's the Halo 3 iteration of that particular piece of music. So it's got that lovely piano breakdown bit in it as well. And I found it very moving and very nostalgic. Took me back to my Xbox days in the early 2000s. And it's only 3 minutes and 7 seconds long. So, if you're in a rush, good video for you. The second video I have is of a port of a game called Zepton to the Amiga 1200, a channel here called Saberman Retro News, and I believe this was originally released on the Pico 8, which is a virtual console, and very interesting voxel rendering engine in this, quite low resolution, and really clever what the developers have done within the limitations of the original console. And it is now available for the Amiga 1200 with 8 megabytes of fast RAM, apparently. I thought this was a really interesting looking game, kind of reminiscent of stuff like Star Fox, I guess, if you remember those on the Nintendo consoles. Perhaps, this kind of third-person spaceship shooter type thing. As you can see, the landscapes and buildings and things are pretty much completely destructible as well, what with it being a voxel game. And quite an interesting take on that particular gameplay formula. 2 minutes and 9 seconds, and there is also a download link down in the description that I spotted if you want to download this and play it for yourself. The third video that I have for you this week is a port of Doom. Shout out to the Doom Shrine behind me. I very nearly made this a story in its own right, but I don't really have anything other than the video to go on. There is a GitHub, that said, that you can go to and also check out the source for this as well and check it out for yourself if you are lucky enough to own a Casio Loopy. And if you don't know anything about the Casio Loopy, it is a very interesting console that was released back in the 90s in Japan exclusively, and it was aimed at girls specifically. So it came with a built-in sticker printer. So you can actually print your own kind of exclusive sticker designs from various different games. And thankfully we have kind of moved on a bit from there. But very interesting piece of hardware, and a very limited piece of hardware, which is what makes it quite interesting as far as porting games like Doom to it is concerned. Now, I hadn't come across this channel before. In fact, I'm going to subscribe to this. Throaty Mumbo, 9,300 subscribers, but it is a very well put together video, and it is nearly an hour long as well. So it covers the unboxing, it covers the history and the story of the Casio Loopy, perhaps more importantly. It has a full unboxing and kind of exploration of the hardware itself, and also the attempts to port Doom to it. And it is such a thorough video. It is incredibly well put together, and of course a very, very clever bit of software engineering as well. So I can highly recommend this if you want to sit down and watch something for an hour. So good to find all of this kind of lesser known high quality content on YouTube. A real treat. That's 56 minutes and 49 seconds from Throaty Mumbo, all about the Casio Loopy. Looks like this one's brand new as well, with all the bits bagged and taped up as well, and porting Doom to it, as you do. My next video number 4, is a documentary all about Evercade, and this is from Digital Foundry, of course, a really big channel in this space. Apparently I'm not subscribed to it. I will say, I quite often subscribe to these things as I go along. I don't use my main YouTube account for this. This is my account that I use to upload videos and things. I tend to do all my viewing on my other account, but just because I've been asked about that in the past. Oddly. Anyway, yes, this is Digital Foundry, massive channel in the retro gaming space, and indeed modern gaming as well. And it's all about Evercade. And of course, Digital Foundry over the years have done lots of really great long-form documentaries covering all sorts of gaming-related subjects, and this one is no different. Evercade, of course, being the company that releases all of those cartridge-based, kind of reissues of all those old games, put together some really nice boxed-up packs with various themes about them. They've got a few Atari collections, Capcom collections, arcade collections, that kind of thing. And, a nice handheld console and a nice TV-based console as well to go along with that and to run those cartridges. Entirely physical releases, so once you've bought it, you own it. and you can do whatever you like with it, and they can't come along and take it away from you. And I think that is becoming increasingly important. And Evercade is something that keeps coming up on my radar again and again, and quite rightly so, because of that particular angle. So, as mentioned, it is an hour and 40 minutes long, so quite the meaty documentary. Very, very well researched, some really nice original game capture footage and technical information and stuff, as you would expect from Digital Foundry. So please do go and check that one out as well. Anyway, moving swiftly onwards, I have a video from one of my favourite channels, That Nukem Guy. I think I'm actually a member of this channel as well. And he has done some very in-depth coverage of Doom and Duke Nukem over the years, as well as a few other first-person shooters. Started off quite small, and I've supported him since he had like around 1,000 subscribers. Nice to see that he's up to 13,500 now. So, he has been putting the work in, so good to see the channel growing. And this is just kind of a demo of a ray tracing mod for Duke Nukem 3D. So we're seeing these modern lighting techniques with these modern GPUs, of course, being applied to more and more of these old games. You know, we've had the Quake and Quake 2 and Doom and, all sorts of other stuff. But, now it's Duke Nukem 3D's turn. I must say, I'm never really sure what to think about these. I think this one is actually quite tastefully done and does kind of add quite a bit of atmosphere and stuff. But sometimes it is a bit over the top and a bit gratuitous. And I do think it kind of detracts from the graphical style of the game. But this is certainly one of the better done ones. And if you don't want to jump through all the hoops of getting this set up for yourself, you can spend 12 minutes and 57 seconds with That Nukem Guy as he explores the ray tracing mod for Duke Nukem 3D. Nice effort. Good to see. 2 more videos for you for this wrap-up. So this is a channel that I have talked about in the past. I talked about their HDR, high dynamic range video, which I thought was of particular interest to retro gamers, perhaps, as we're seeing some good shader effects and things that are taking advantage of that technology. This is Slidebean, and this is a video all about cinematic black bars that we see at the top and the bottom of the screen, sometimes in various videos. Netflix, of course, quite famously using them to give their shows a more cinematic effect, even stuff that was never released at the cinema, because, of course, we have that association. Cinema screens being a wider aspect ratio than the 16:9 that we have on our home TVs. And this talks all about that, how it's kind of used creatively, how it's kind of faked, where it originally came from, and how it kind of adds to various TV shows and films that have been produced using that effect over the years. Really kind of fun and entertaining, but also very well researched and very informative documentary from Slidebean. And very much in the same vein as the HDR documentary that I talked about previously. So 39 minutes and 4 seconds long if you want to learn all about black bars. And finally, of course, I have to cover this because this is the latest in the series, something that I've been covering for quite a while now. This is MVG, our good friend Demetrius, modern vintage gamer. A man who is no stranger to porting software development. Of course, he worked for Night Dive for a while, working on some of their remasters of some of their classic first-person shooters. He kind of started off in the original Xbox homebrew scene, porting MAME and some other emulators and things, and has been involved in emulator development and various other projects since. Now, of course, best known as a YouTuber with his channel, Modern Vintage Gamer, and he threw down the gauntlet a couple of months back and he put out this video trying to explain why there wasn't a port of Doom to the Neo Geo, and saying, it's technically impossible because of the limitations of that console. And of course, that led to, oh my goodness, my voice is going. Of course, that led to a bit of an arms race of people attempting to port Doom to the Neo Geo to prove him wrong. And this is the latest in his series covering those. So I was wrong. Doom runs on everything, even Neo Geo. Looks like this might be the final in the series. And as you can see, this is very recognisably Doom running on the Neo Geo console from SNK, another 68,000 based machine. My goodness, what's going on with my voice? Anyway, they're my 7 videos of the week for you this week. We have that wonderful rendition of the Halo theme from the HM Royal Marines. We've got a port of Zepton, a rather cool looking game, to the Amiga 1200. We have a port of Doom to the Casio Loopy, and in and of itself, a very informative and interesting documentary about that console. We have the Digital Foundry's Retro Super Show episode all about the Evercade, the rise of Evercade and the history of physical games. Nice, long, meaty documentary for you there. That Nukem guy just giving us a demo of this ray-traced mod for Duke Nukem 3D. We have this cinematic black bar documentary from Slidebean, who we have previously seen with their wonderful HDR documentary. And finally, MVG's latest update on developers trying to prove him wrong by porting Doom to the Neo Geo. Hope there's something in there for you that you might find of interest. Of course, you can find all the links down below in the description, or if you're listening to this on your podcast platform of choice, also in the show notes on that particular app. Now, I think I'm going to go and have a drink of water before we wrap this episode up. And sadly, that means that, as always, this ramble must now begin to draw to a close, but not without one more thing, one last story that caught my attention over the past week that made me smile. And it's quite surprising that this made me smile, because it's a story from Microsoft, who have been very naughty over the past couple of weeks, as I have reported at the beginning of this ramble. But this is software preservation. It's open sourcing something that I have some quite fond memories of, despite the fact that I never really understood what it was all about back in the day. This is Microsoft Comic Chat, which is now open source. And as mentioned, I remember playing with this in Windows 95 when I was like 11 years old, firing this up, typing things into the boxes and having these speech bubbles appear above the characters. So it's a comic book styled chat interface. Now, what I didn't understand at the time was that this actually plugs into IRC. So you could go online and chat to all of your online friends via IRC, which I was very much unaware of at the time, and it would render the whole conversation out as like a comic book, which is a really cool concept. Very unusual thing to see from Microsoft at the time. Another thing that they have mentioned here, although they've kind of danced around it a little bit, apparently this is the chat client that brought Comic Sans to the world, and that is indeed how the article opens over on opensource.microsoft.com. I remember Comic Sans being actually created for Microsoft Bob. Is that correct? I'm not quite sure. I haven't researched it. Which was around the same time. And of course, that was a project by Melinda Gates, Bill Gates' other half, or indeed ex-other half nowadays. The less said about that, the better. And she wanted to create an interface for computers that was less intimidating for people who perhaps found the desktop metaphor of Windows a bit confusing, and use this kind of concept of going around a house and going to the different rooms and using that to launch your various programs and things, having them represented as like ornaments on shelves, and quite a weird and interesting concept. But I actually thought that was where Comic Sans came from. But hey, maybe not. Maybe it was from Comic Chat. Maybe the two came about at the same time. Anyway, today we're excited to announce the open source release of Microsoft Comic Chat, the chat client that automatically turned conversations within Internet Relay Chat into comic panels, featuring illustrated characters, speech bubbles and expressions, and helped introduce the world to a little font called Comic Sans. Yes, that Comic Sans, originally designed by Microsoft typographer Vincent Conner. In 1994, Comic Sans found its first real home in Comic Chat, where its informal, hand-lettered feel match the software's speech bubble conversations perfectly. And this is quite an interesting article talking about how Comic Chat actually came about, and about the team that developed it, brought it into the world, and a bit of history about the chat client itself. This is bringing back all sorts of memories for me. You could set up these comics and you could pick your character and you could choose the facial expressions, type stuff into the text box, and it would actually render it out. And genuinely, as a kid, no idea that this plugged into a much bigger service called IRC. And if I had, I would have had an awful lot of fun with it, an awful lot more fun with it. So it was built in Visual C++ 4.0 and MFC, and was released in 1996 with the Internet Explorer 3 web browser. There you go, Microsoft Comic Chat is now officially open source, linked down below as per all the other stories mentioned in this week's Ramble. There's also a GitHub for that if you want to check out the source and perhaps port it to a modern system, or bring back Microsoft Comic Chat, plug it into Discord or whatever the kids are using to chat nowadays. Anyway, that's all I have for you for this week's Ramble. So thank you ever so much for joining me. These go out at 2 minutes to midnight every Friday night UK time on my second UK YouTube channel, youtube.com/Rees Rambles, and also on the podcast platforms in audio format as well. I'm losing the will to live here. It's been a very long day. I also need to go and edit this up and get it uploaded. So I'm going to do that right now. Hopefully see you, same time and place, next week. Bye.